We have had a major Haaland injury update going into Game Week 20, which is going to completely change our transfer plans. And it's also the final game week that you can use your first wildcard. So we're going to give you guys a Game Week 20 wildcard draft that I think is the best around. So if you look forward to today's video, please do consider dropping a like, smashing that subscribe button. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. So the latest on Erling Haaland is that he wasn't in the squad for the Man City-Everton game in Game Week 19, which was a big indicator that he isn't fit. We need to remind ourselves that they do have the Sheffield United game 3 days later in Game Week 20. So from an FPL perspective, it isn't looking good that he is going to be fully fit for that game. We've also had these quotes from Pep Guardiola, which has suggested that he still hasn't trained with the team. He's feeling better, but he hasn't made one training session with us. Hopefully in January, he can come back with us. So to me, that screams out that he isn't going to be available for the Game Week 20 fixture against Sheffield United this weekend, which completely changes everything because a lot of FPL managers had their transfers saved up or were allocating their money to other players in order to afford Erling Haaland for Game Week 20 in that brilliant fixture at home against Sheffield United. Now, on a side note, it looks like Kevin De Bruyne could be back for the squad soon, which is, of course, is another fantastic option in that Man City team. But we need to focus on Erling Haaland. So if it isn't Game Week 20, when should we buy him back? Let's take a look. So with these quotes from Pep Guardiola, the question is, when should we be buying Erling Haaland? Well, first up, I wanted to put up the fixture schedule for Man City over the foreseeable future. So on the 30th of December, which is this weekend, they have the home fixture at Sheffield United. Unless we were to get any team leaks, I'm going to say Haaland is a complete avoid in Game Week 20 because he simply doesn't look like he is trained. He isn't going to be available for that fixture. Now, interestingly, we then have a 2-week period where there are no Premier League games. And the next game is Game Week 21 away against Newcastle on the 13th of January. Now, this is really important because it also gives Erling Haaland a 2-week period to get fully fit for that game. But we also do have an FA Cup fixture in between those 2 dates. So we could see Haaland maybe pop up in the squad on the bench. And if that was to happen, we then get full clarification that he is going to be available for the fixture on the 13th of January. And if I had to hedge a guess, I probably would say that is a likely date that he's going to return back to the Man City squad. Now, if he doesn't play in Game Week 21, then we have another 2-week period with no Premier League game until he plays Burnley at home in Game Week 22. And to be honest with you, that feels like the opportunity where you definitely need Erling Haaland if you don't have him already. I'll be astonished if he isn't available for Game Week 22. So based on the fixtures right now, I think Game Week 20 is a no-go. Even if he is possibly on the bench, his minutes are going to be really limited and it just isn't worth going there. So I think Game Week 21 makes a lot of sense. The big problem with it is that, of course, it is away against Newcastle. And some may look at it and think, well, it's not the best fixture in the world. And I do totally agree with you. However, as I've mentioned here, we have Son and Salah going off to their respective competitions. We have Salah going to the AFCON and we have Son going to the Asia Cup. So you're going to have to sell both of those players regardless in Game Week 21. And that being said, you're going to have loads of money available. So I think even though the fixture isn't ideal, unless you have a real unique squad balance, I think just selling Salah and Son in Game Week 21 to accommodate Erling Haaland, knowing that he is going to be a long-term transfer for your FPL teams, is the right way to go. I know the entry point isn't great for Game Week 21, but just know that you have him in place for Game Week 22. Now, of course, in the worst case scenario, and we get rumours that Erling Haaland isn't available for Game Week 21, then we do need to be a little bit smarter with our moves because once we sell Salah and Son in Game Week 21, I think you're going to be very tempted to put all of that money into the squad. But you need to make sure you do have a Haaland plan in place for when he returns. If it isn't in Game Week 21, then I'm certain it will be in Game Week 22. So my thoughts, avoiding Game Week 20 and plan to buy in Game Week 21. Next up, I want to take a look at the popular Game Week 20 transfers because these three right now are gaining a lot of traction in the FPL community, but I think they're not necessarily absolute guarantees for your team. So we have Garnacho, a midfielder, remember, at 4.7 million. He is getting a lot of attention because of the brace he scored against Aston Villa. We have hat-trick hero Chris Wood at 4.9 million, and of course, Julian Alvarez at 6.8 million. He is getting a lot of interest because, of course, the continued injury to Erling Haaland. So first of all, I want to take a look at the underlying numbers for these players because we need to discuss whether they should actually be options for your FPL team. Now, first up, Garnacho, let's take a look at him. At 4.7 million, he is a brilliant enabler for our FPL teams. It looks like he is going to be a starter for Man United. He started the last 5 or 6 league games, either off the right flank or replacing Rashford on the left. Now, my expectation is that seeing the lineup that they played against Aston Villa and the joy that they had against that high line, I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a continuation of Fernandes as the 10, Garnacho off the right, Rashford off the left, and Haaland down the middle. Now, I don't want to jump to any conclusions here because I don't think Man United have magically become a great team, but at 4.7 million, we do have to consider somebody who is starting each and every week for Man United. Now, the numbers are okay. Remember, he's only played 970 minutes, but he's got an XG per 90 of 0.33 and expected assists of 0.13. What I really like about him in this team is that when they are playing against teams who do play the high line, he becomes an even better option with the counter-attack of Rashford on that left flank. We saw it a few times where he was squaring the ball to Garnacho, and he could have had a few goals in that Aston Villa game. My only concern with Garnacho is he is a little bit wasteful, and I do wonder how Man United are going to continue as a team going forward. I think you're still buying a great enabler, but for a team that you just do not know how they're going to perform week in, week out. Now, talking about players who I cannot believe are on this list is going to be Chris Wood off the back of that hat-trick. Now, this is a really interesting one because at 4.9 million, he hasn't played a lot of minutes at 640 minutes across the course of the season, but we do have a new manager in charge in Nuno Espirito Santos. So it's very difficult to come to any conclusions right now on Chris Wood because although he might not have been a massive favourite for Steve Cooper, he could be the main man for Nuno, and that changes the narrative completely. Now, he is a proven goal scorer in this league, not completely obviously the levels of Erling Haaland, but he is a player that knows how to score at this level, and an XG per 90 of 0.58 is really good underlying numbers. 0.13 expected assists per 90. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that we have to buy Chris Wood at 4.9 million, but I do think we need to actually stand up and look at it and think, if Nuno is going to get the best out of this Forest team, and he has quick players like a Langer and Hudson-Odoi around him who are going to create chances for him, we do need to sit here and say to ourselves, could he be the enabler that we're all looking for? I think we're trying to find a way of bringing Erling Haaland back into our teams later, as some are going for a cheap fifth midfielder like Garnacho, and others are maybe looking to go for a Haaland, Watkins and cheap forward. And Chris Wood could be the answer. He's only 0.5 million more expensive than the cheapest forward in the game. And you're getting a player that I would imagine is going to play week in, week out for a team that are fighting relegation. So I don't mind Chris Wood as an enabler for Erling Haaland later down the line. And the other one is going to be Julian Alvarez. Now, these two players previously were talking about enabling money for Erling Haaland. This one is a direct replacement for Haaland. I want to put it out there firstly and say, I think the minute Haaland returns, Alvarez is a big problem in FPL. This is the reason. We're seeing him play as a forward, so he would then return back to the number 10 position. However, Phil Foden has been one of the best Man City players over the last few weeks in that pocket space. So I do think Foden is now ahead of Alvarez in that position. And we're also seeing the return of Kevin De Bruyne. We can't fit all these players in that team. So I do expect Alvarez minutes to slightly decline more than what we've been seeing recently. But while Haaland's out, Alvarez needs to be a consideration for our FPL teams. The numbers aren't phenomenal. 0.33 XG per 90, 0.21 XA per 90. As a forward in this Man City team, yes, I know he hasn't played there the full time, but I'd expect better numbers. However, for the game at home against Sheffield United in game week 20, it feels like an amazing opportunity to jump on Julian Alvarez, even if it is for only one game week, to then enable yourself to go to Erling Haaland in game week 21. So he is a fantastic option if you can get to Julian Alvarez. I'll choose him over both of these options here. But let's take a look at the fixtures firstly. Now, I wanted to pinpoint the fixtures that all three of these players do have to see if it is the right time to be bringing him in. Now, as I mentioned, Julian Alvarez is now or never for him because each game week that passes, we are getting Haaland back and we're getting Kevin De Bruyne back. So I think game week 20 is the time to bring him in. And if it is a 1 week punt, then so be it. we could have a cricket score against this Sheffield United team if Man City do step up and play the way that they can. So it's game week 20 or never for Julian Alvarez is my viewpoint. Looking at Garnacho and Man United, I think these fixtures long term are actually really good. We're going to get the high line of Spurs in game week 21, which could be brilliant for Garnacho. But then after that, Wolves, West Ham, low blocks might be difficult for somebody like a Garnacho to really shine. And then they have the return leg against Aston Villa, followed by Luton. So I don't think the fixtures are terrible for Garnacho, but don't be expecting the space that they had in all of these fixtures. I think Tottenham is the only other case where we will see those runners in and behind the defensive line that they do offer. But at 4.7 million long term, I think he's a really good hold for your FPL teams, and I think his game time is going to be pretty good over that period. Last up, Chris Wood. I'm not excited by these fixtures. I know he scored a hat-trick in game week 19. I know he might become the talisman of Nottingham Forest, but what are we expecting over this period? I think Nuno would have to really pull a rabbit out of the hat to get major results over this period. And it's worth noting, Forest could lose all of these games if Chris Wood ticks over with 1 goal each in every game. But unless you are looking at him as an incredible enabler as a third forward, I don't think you need to go there. I would invest your money in Julian Alvarez and then just address the Haaland situation later down the line. So we have to talk about wildcards for game week 20, because if you didn't know, and I'm going to put it up here, it is the last week for you to use your first wildcard of the season. I've put up the official kind of quote from the FPL site, but you can see here clearly until the 30th of December, which is game week 20 deadline. So if you haven't used your first wildcard, good news, you need to use it. So get it done now. And I thought it'd be a great opportunity for me to build a wildcard draft that I would have right now. Now, I don't think this is absolutely locked in, this draft, because I think there are lots of different directions you could take it. And it's also a very difficult time to use your wildcard because of the problems with Salah, Son, Haaland, which I will touch on in a minute. But I want to work my way down from goalkeepers all the way down to forwards and the players that I think are absolutely essential for your wildcard. So first at the goalkeeper department, I've gone for Dubravka and Pickford. I put up the fixtures here, how they rotate with one another. Now, Dubravka I think is good long term. He's in the Newcastle team, but there is a slight worry that he could potentially lose his place if Newcastle do dip into the January transfer window. I think if that happens, we just accept it, but you make sure that your second goalkeeper is a starter for their respective teams. And I put Jordan Pickford in right now. And of course, you can see the rotation planner on your screens. I think we get some decent long-term fixtures for these. And I think with Everton, we have a defence that we probably can trust a lot more than some of the other goalkeeper options out there. So this rotation works. 4.4 million for Pickford, I think, is a great investment because he's good on the bonus points and on save points. I think that's really, really important. I don't think we need to spend loads of money on the likes of Ederson or Alisson in my eyes. Now, in terms of this rotation, if you want to go a little bit cheaper and go for maybe an Areola Dubravka rotation, because I know quite a few are already on that, I will put it up on your screens now because the rotation is very, very good. Brighton, Sheffield United and Bournemouth for Areola, and then we'll drop down to Dubravka for Luton, Forest, Bournemouth. It's a really good rotation, but I know quite a lot of people have lost faith in the West Ham defence, and I totally understand that. So that's why I've just lent towards the Pickford Dubravka rotation. I think longer term it could pay more dividends investing in better defences. Now, moving into the midfield, I spoke about players that I think are absolutely essential, and one of those is going to be Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think he is a brilliant option for our teams, especially when we have all this money knocking about with some of the premium assets not in the game anymore. In terms of bonus points, he is one of the best in the game, regardless of position, and we're seeing him being played as such a creative player in this Liverpool team, playing quarterback at times, coming into those half spaces. And with the Liverpool fixtures coming up, even though I don't necessarily think clean sheets are a given over this period, we saw in game week 19 that he doesn't necessarily have to be getting clean sheets. I know he did in that game week, but he is just going to be a monster on the bonus points without even any attacking potential. So for me, Trent is locked in, especially when we are losing all of these premium players. And Gabriel as well in this Arsenal defence. I think he's now guaranteed his spot. The Arsenal fixtures long-term are brilliant. And I think we just get a piece of that Arsenal defence, which is, based on underlying numbers, the best in the league. Don't think you need to pay the premium for somebody like a Saliba. And we know Gabriel is a threat from set pieces. Now, Gusto as well. I want to cast your eyes to the other side. 4.1 million. I'm expecting him to play week in, week out for Chelsea. We have Disasi, I'm a Chelsea fan, playing right back recently, and it's chalk and cheese from what Gusto is offering us in the final third. I'm expecting him to play every single week, and from an attacking perspective, it is the closest we are going to see to somebody like a Reece James. He isn't that good, but he definitely is getting into the position. So Gusto at 4.1 million, I think, is an amazing enabler. Now, the last two are up for grabs. Pedro Porro is absolutely locked into this team, but Van der Ven's still out, and we also have Romero out for 5 weeks with a hamstring injury, which makes the Spurs clean sheet even less likely. But I do know that Pedro Porro is this close to a 15-pointer at some point. For anybody that watches the games, he is phenomenal. So I'm going to put him in the squad at 5.5 million. I do think long-term he is worth it, with the expectation of Spurs becoming better and better once the players return. It's just when do they come back is the big issue, because they have no Basuma or Papa Sarr as well. Last up about Concerin, I think he's the best Aston Villa defender if you want to go there. He is basically just a boring centre-back because we have exciting picks like Trent, Porro and Gusto. So he's just there for the good Aston Villa fixtures when we need him. Now, you will notice there is not a certain Kieran Trippier, and I know it's really controversial because I do think between now and the end of the season, Kieran Trippier probably is just a player that should be in your wildcard teams. So he's the first player that I want to mention that you definitely can put him in your wildcard team. I've just not put him in because I don't think he's playing well, and sometimes I don't really feel comfortable putting in players that are not playing well actually in their own selves. So I've left Kieran Trippier out of this draft, but if you could fit him in, I definitely think he's a player that you just set and forget long term. Newcastle not in any European competitions. I think they will return back to the norm, but the fixtures aren't phenomenal for Newcastle, and I don't think there's any options outside of him that maybe I would like to go to. I think maybe if you are going there, Botman is probably the choice. So we could actually replace Konsa with Botman and get ourselves a Newcastle defender long term. I don't mind that at all. Now, moving into midfield, let's talk about this first and foremost. No Mo Salah or Son. This is the big problem right now with obviously building a wildcard team in game week 20, because we know both Son and Salah are going to be going off to AFCON and Asia Cup from game week 21 onwards. So firstly, what you could do is just build a game week 20 wildcard team with both Salah and Son in, but then you are going to have to book yourselves 2 transfers for game week 21 to sell both of those players, because they're such a big part of your budget. And that, of course, after a wildcard means you only get 1 free transfer. So you are going to have to take a -4. So I don't think you can put both in. I think you could put Son in your wildcard team and then look to game week 21, sideways him to someone like a Richarlison. But of course, with the problem right now of Erling Haaland being ruled out for game week 20, but potentially back for game week 21, I think all the attention is going to be on how we get Haaland back, rather than having to move somebody like a Son out of your team as well. So I think we just avoid those two for this game week and we cover ourselves with other brilliant options. So I've gone for the double Arsenal midfield of Saka and Odegaard. To be honest with you, I don't really like Saka right now, but I think he's going to be guaranteed minutes in this Arsenal team. And I think we are just going to see Saka be a better and better asset as we continue throughout this season. I don't think he can continue at this rate to be as poor in front of goal as what he is. So I think he is obviously on a ticking clock right now, but I think he still makes the team. And Odegaard is definitely in right now because we want some differentials. And at 8.4 million, I think he's one of the best differentials in the game. Guaranteed game time, and his numbers are getting really, really good right now with the new position that we've seen him play more centrally rather than those half spaces on the right hand flank. Palmer's still in at 5.2 million. We could go for a Garnacho at 4.7 if you want to be a bit spicy, but I still think Cole Palmer is the best enabler at that price point. Jarrod Bowen absolutely locked in at 7.9 million. With the absence of Kudos over the AFCON, we're going to rely on Bowen as well to score. I think he is the probably most locked midfielder in this draft. And we've also gone Richarlison because once Son has gone to the Asia Cup, you're going to want someone like a Richarlison in your team. Last up the forwards, I think Watkins is still in. I had this problem last time where he blanked and I started panicking and selling him. I think he is still a brilliant option for FPL teams. Do not panic that he didn't score against Man United. We've gone for the Dominic Solanke and Julian Alvarez front three. Now, you're probably sat there thinking, how are we going to afford Erling Haaland? Some managers with this team will have enough money to upgrade any of their forwards later down the line to Erling Haaland. But my big issue is this. Sometimes with players like Haaland, where you wait and wait and wait and just keep all the money in the bank till he's available, can hurt you over the short term, because we've seen it. Some managers that held on to Haaland have been kind of hurt because you don't have an official date he's going to be back. So we could keep the money and then we wait and we wait and we wait and we don't actually get him back until game week 22, I think we just put the money in this team with a decent chunk of money in the bank, knowing that from 2 moves we can get ourselves to Erling Haaland. So with this team, you should be able to, for example, upgrade Alvarez to a Haaland, and we can always make a midfield transfer if we need to. But I don't think we need to completely focus on Erling Haaland with your team. Build a team that looks great from an 8th attacker perspective, and we address the Haaland situation when we get there. So here is the wildcard team. Let me know your thoughts in the comments who is missing. So last up, I wanted to give you guys an update on my game week 20 transfer plan. So of course, we still have a few games left in game week 19. My rank currently is 224,000, but I have quite a few players to play tonight. I have people like Saliba, Gabriel, Saka. I'm hoping for some returns from them and the likes of Son. So I will give you an update eventually what my overall rank is in tomorrow's video officially. So here's how the team's looking for game week 20. I've got 3.3 million in the bank and 1 free transfer available. Now, on paper, my team actually looks quite good. I've got Gordon as first sub away against Liverpool, which isn't the worst thing in the world because I do think Liverpool will be susceptible to the Newcastle attack. But it looks pretty good. I'm happy with Dominic Solanke away against Spurs with the injuries that they do have. No Romero, no Van der Ven. I think Bournemouth definitely can get something against that Spurs team. So I don't think a desperate transfer is needed. Now, we discussed in this video about the benefit of bringing in a Julian Alvarez at home against Sheffield United. And I can't lie, I am very tempted to pull the trigger on that. Now, I wouldn't sell Watkins, and I can't bring myself to sell somebody like a Dominic Solanke who's in fantastic form. So what it would mean is that I would sell Mbama, my third forward, for Julian Alvarez. I would get myself an 8th attacker, but it would mean I would then have to bench somebody like a Gabriel away against Fulham. I don't think I can bench Cole Palmer away against Luton, even though I am a little bit worried for returns in that game because Chelsea will struggle against the low block that Luton are going to pose. So I could even bench somebody like a Cole Palmer, but it likely would be Gabriel, and then Alvarez would come into this team. Now, it would be very much a 1-week punt. I am very conscious of that because I think Haaland, looking at the fixtures that we discussed, will probably be back for game week 21. And then I'm going to have to take a -4 point hit, maybe even a -8 in game week 21 to sell Son, sell Salah, and a forward, which will be Julian Alvarez, for an Erling Haaland. So on the face of it, game week 20, I am very tempted to do Mbama to Alvarez, but then in game week 21, it will look something like Son to Richarlison, Salah to Bowen, and then Alvarez up to Erling Haaland, and it will be a -8, but I know that it is a long-term move for my FPL team. Otherwise, what I can do is simply just roll the transfer this week, and then in game week 21, sell Son, sell Salah, and then sell obviously one of my forwards, and it will only be for a -4. So I need to weigh up whether Alvarez at home against Sheffield United is going to reap the returns, because it could be a cricket score, as I mentioned, if Man City do turn up to beat them. So that is my game week 20 transfer plans. I will update you in tomorrow's video with my team reveal, so make sure you are subscribed if not already. And let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. Yes, guys, okay, that is going to wrap up today's game week 20 preview video. It is good to be back. It's been like over a week, so it's been awesome to record the videos back, and we're going to be back all the way up until the season now, so I cannot wait. So as always, if you did enjoy today's video, please do drop a like and smash the subscribe button. We will be doing the game week 20 team reveal video tomorrow, and then of course a deadline live stream Saturday morning. Cannot wait for it. Make sure you do subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Cheers.